Most people know Holy Week as a religious holiday. Others see it as a tradition, a custom, a parade, or just some marked days on the calendar. But here is the real question. What if you have never truly understood what actually happened during those days? What if behind every scene, behind every tear, every blow, every betrayal, and every single nail lies the answer to the pain you are carrying deep inside? Because let's be honest, some wounds are invisible. There are nights when you smile on the outside, but inside you are exhausted, broken, disappointed, and silent. Some people keep moving, working and talking to everyone, while carrying guilt, fear, anxiety, and betrayal deep inside. Emptiness, unanswered questions, and a heavy weight they cannot let go. And right there, where the soul breaks and the heart runs out of strength, that is where the story of Holy Week stops being just an ancient tale and becomes a truth that cuts right through you. Today we will not look at a cold, distant, or repetitive story. Today we will step into the most intense, painful, and powerful days in the entire Bible. We are going to walk the crowded streets of Jerusalem. We will feel the tension of a restless city, the crushing weight of betrayal, the agony of Gethsemane, and the heavy silence of an unjust night, the horror of the cross, and the hope that seemed impossible when all was lost. Because Holy Week is not just the story of Christ's suffering. It is the story of God's love stepping into human pain to rescue those who could no longer save themselves. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and stay with us until the end. Because Holy Week, according to the Bible, is far deeper, more painful, and more glorious than most imagine. The beginning of the week that changed history. It all started at a time when Jerusalem was far from a quiet, peaceful city. As Passover approached, its streets began to fill with pilgrims from all over. Men, women, the elderly, and entire families climbed up to the holy city with hearts full of memories. This was not just any ordinary festival. Passover was a reminder of the night God rescued Israel from slavery in Egypt, when the blood of the Lamb marked the difference between life and death, between judgment and divine protection. That is why during those days, Jerusalem filled not just with people, but with expectation, spiritual tension, religious excitement, and a deep restlessness hanging in the air. Picture the scene clearly. The city was bursting at the seams, the narrow streets, the stone steps, the courtyards, the gates, and the temple grounds. Everything was buzzing with activity. You could hear voices everywhere. They spoke of sacrifices, purification, ancient promises, Rome and Israel's future. Because the people were not living in political freedom. They were under Roman rule, which meant any massive religious gathering always carried a strong undercurrent of social and political tension. Roman guards watched closely. Jewish leaders feared riots, and the people, caught between faith and oppression, kept hoping that God would do something massive. Jesus entered right into this environment, revealing one of the deepest truths of Holy Week. He did not arrive in Jerusalem blind to what lay ahead. He did not face those days caught off guard by fate. He was not swept along by events. Jesus walked into that week fully aware. Every step had a clear purpose. Every decision carried intentional weight. While those around him saw only a famous teacher, a powerful prophet, or a man followed by crowds, heaven was watching something infinitely greater, the unfolding of God's eternal plan. This gives the story massive weight, because while the city prepared to remember deliverance from Egypt, the true Lamb was stepping onto the stage. While thousands reflected on God's past works, the ultimate act of redemption was about to unfold right before their eyes. And the crazy thing is, most still did not understand. Many felt that something big was happening, but they could not grasp the sheer depth of that moment. It was as if Israel's entire history, with its promises and sacrifices, prophecies and hopes, were converging in those days without anyone fully recognizing it. The sorrow of Holy Week does not start with the cross or with obvious suffering, but with a quietly solemn entry toward completing the greatest mission in the entire Bible. It begins with Jesus approaching the center of conflict, the heart of the city, where he would be rejected, betrayed, and crucified. Yet he keeps moving forward, never backing down, never hiding, making no attempt to save himself from the looming pain. This already shows us the depths of Christ's heart. His love was not made up on the spot, nor was his sacrifice an accident. His obedience did not require easy paths. You can feel the sharp contrast here. On one side, the city hums with noise, religion, tradition, and busyness. On the other, Jesus walks with a calm, born not of ignorance, but of obedience. He knows this week will bring betrayal, abandonment, injustice, foreign, suffering, and death. Yet he also knows that beyond all of it lies the Father's will. This hits home for us today because we usually only want to move forward when we understand everything, when everything is perfectly clear and the path feels safe. Jesus, however, pressed on, knowing the cost, knowing the pain, knowing the impending darkness, and still he kept going. There is also something deeply human about this beginning. The crowd had its own expectations. Some hoped for a political liberator, others wanted to see miracles, and others were probably just swept up in the crowd's excitement. We still do that today. Many approach Jesus with incomplete ideas of who he is, seeking him for quick relief, fast solutions, religious feelings, or temporary needs. But Holy Week begins by showing us that Jesus came for something much deeper than fixing a brief crisis. He came to confront the root of our human problem: sin, separation from God, and the inner slavery of the heart. That is why the start of this week is not just the beginning of a dramatic series of events. It is the moment God's love steps decisively into the pain of human history. This is the start of the road to Calvary, yes, but also to the empty tomb. It is the beginning of the ultimate clash between God's holiness and human sin, between light and darkness, between the perfect obedience of the Son and the rebellion of the world. And once you realize that, you can no longer view Holy Week as just another yearly religious tradition. It becomes a living, breathing story, intense and heavy with glory, where every scene holds eternal meaning. Because from this very moment, Jesus is not just visiting Jerusalem, he is entering the week that would split history in two, the week when heaven would touch earth in the most painful yet glorious way. The week when the love of God would stop being just a spoken promise and become a visible, concrete, and ultimate sacrifice. Part 2. The Triumphal Entry. A king unlike any other. After that atmosphere charged with expectation, with Jerusalem pulsing under the weight of Passover and the tension of those days, we arrive at a scene that looks glorious, yet is filled with deep contrast and mystery. Jesus approaches the city and decides to make his entry in a very specific way. He does not ride in on a war horse, nor does he arrive surrounded by soldiers. He builds no army and stages no show of human power. He enters riding a young donkey, a humble, simple animal, associated more with peace than with conquest. And in that detail, which might have seemed small to some, something massive was already being revealed. The king entering Jerusalem was nothing like the rulers of this world. To truly feel the weight of this moment, we must imagine how people usually welcomed a victorious ruler. In ancient times, when a king entered a city after a triumph, he did so with massive displays of power. Horses, chariots, armed men, banners, noise, wealth, spectacle. It was all engineered to impress, intimidate, and make it absolutely clear who was in charge. But Jesus chose the exact opposite. His entry held real dignity, yes, but a dignity that did not rely on violence or outward show. He had authority, but not from military force. He had majesty, but a majesty wrapped in humility. And that was already beginning to shatter the expectations of many. The crowd reacted instantly. They spread their cloaks on the road, cutting branches and waving them as Jesus rode past. It was their way of honoring him, of recognizing he was no ordinary man. The atmosphere must have been electric. Road dust rising under thousands of feet, the roar of voices blending together, children watching in sheer wonder, adults shouting with joy, and the disciples realizing they were living through a historic turning point. And above all the noise, a powerful cry rang out, "Hosanna!" It was a cry that carried the desperate plea for salvation, a hope-filled prayer, but also a shout of recognition. In other words, many were crying out, "Lord, save us. Save us now. You are the chosen one." By calling him the Son of David, the crowd was directly linking Jesus to their messianic hope. This was no empty title. David had been Israel's greatest king, and the promises of a descendant who would rule forever were deeply engraved in the hearts of the people. So when the crowd shouts like that, they are not just celebrating an arrival. They are releasing generations of built-up expectation. They look at Jesus and wonder, maybe this is the moment. Maybe the promised kingdom is finally here. Maybe at last we will see God's power restore Israel before the entire world. But right here, we find one of the deepest tensions of Holy Week. The crowd was right to welcome Jesus as king, but they did not understand what kind of king he was. They wanted freedom, yes, but most of them only imagined it in political, earthly terms. They lived under Roman oppression, enduring crushing taxes, national humiliation, and the pain of being subjugated. To many, the arrival of the Messiah meant a military rebellion that would break the back of the Roman Empire, restore sovereignty to the people, and return Israel to earthly glory. That was exactly what they wanted to see. Yet Jesus was riding in to fight a slavery far deeper than Roman rule. He did not come to overthrow a military occupation, but to confront sin, corruption of the heart, religious hypocrisy, and death itself. That difference changes everything, because while the people saw a physical crisis, Jesus saw an eternal need. The crowd dreamed of physical thrones. Christ was establishing a kingdom that starts within the human heart. They wanted a national hero, but God was sending the Savior of the world. And here, the scene becomes even more stunning. Picture Jesus moving slowly forward, hearing the deafening shouts, seeing the cloaks littering the dirt road, feeling the massive collective excitement while knowing in his heart that most of these people had no idea what path he was truly on. They are celebrating a triumph, but he knows what lies ahead. Betrayal, a sham trial, the cross, and death. The crowd envisions a coronation. Jesus is already looking at Calvary, yet he does not stop. He keeps moving forward. That is what makes this entry triumphal, yes, but deeply profound. It is an entry heavy with glory, but also with deep, aching sorrow. There is also something highly revealing in how the religious leaders react. While the people rejoice, they grow uneasy. Where some see hope, others see a threat. Where some celebrate the Messiah, others begin to harden their hearts. Because the presence of Jesus never leaves things as they are. His arrival always demands a response. Some welcome him in faith, others watch with deep suspicion, and some reject him completely because his mere presence exposes human pride, hypocrisy, and the urge to control God for personal gain. That conflict continues today. Jesus is still admired by many, but he is not always welcomed as Lord with the obedience he deserves. This moment forces us to examine our own relationship with Christ. It is easy to shout, to get swept up in the emotion, to admire Jesus, and still completely miss who he is. It is possible to crave his blessings while rejecting his authority. We can celebrate his miracles, yet fiercely resist his truth. The triumphal entry confronts us with a hard truth. It asks if we only want Jesus when he delivers what we expect, or if we are ready to follow him when his path crashes into our own plans. And there is one more detail that makes this scene even more powerful. Jesus enters with humility, but that humility is not weakness. It is not the humility of someone without authority. It is the humility of the true king, the one who needs no human show to prove his worth, because his identity never depended on the crowd. He knows who he is, where he comes from, and what his mission is. That is why he can enter with gentleness, yet remain glorious. He can come in peace while remaining sovereign. He can draw close while remaining holy. So the triumphal entry is not just a beautiful scene to admire from afar. It is a quiet, powerful declaration of who Christ really is. He is the promised king, but not as the world expected. He is the Messiah, but not by human standards. He is the Savior, but he comes to save us from the root. And while Jerusalem echoes with palms, cloaks, and cries of Hosanna, we begin to grasp something deeply decisive. The king has arrived, but his victory is won not by the sword, but by obedience, sacrifice, and love to the end. Part 3. Jesus weeps over Jerusalem. Love amidst rejection. And right after that intense entry, so heavy with hope, loud shouts, waving branches, and high messianic expectations, a moment unfolds that completely changes the emotional tone of the story. While everyone else is celebrating, Jesus stops to look at the city, watching from above. Stretched out before him with its massive walls, crowded homes and streets packed with pilgrims, and above all, the temple dominating the horizon as the spiritual heart of the people. Jerusalem shone on the outside, rich with history, tradition, and sacred memories. This was the city of David, the home of the temple, the place of God's name. Yet as he looks at it, Jesus does not smile. He weeps. It is deeply moving. The king enters. The crowd cheers. The moment feels triumphant, but he weeps. We are not witnessing some superficial emotion or a passing wave of sadness. We see the heart of the Son of God shaken by the spiritual reality of a city that, despite all its religion, completely missed the defining moment it was living through. While human eyes saw a grand celebration, Jesus saw something much deeper. He saw rejection, spiritual blindness, and a glorious moment people were failing to recognize. Stop and think about this, because these tears reveal something profound about Christ. Jesus does not look at Jerusalem with coldness, contempt, or distance. He does not act like someone saying, "They did not want me, so let them suffer the consequences." No, he weeps. This shows us that the coming judgment was not something he watched with pleasure, but with deep sorrow. His heart overflows with compassion, even for those who would soon reject him. It is breathtaking, because Christ's love does not depend on how well we receive him for him to show us mercy. He loves even when resisted. He weeps for those who never understood him. The scene feels even heavier when we think about what Jerusalem actually represented. It was not just any place. It was where sacrifices were offered, where the law was taught, and where psalms were sung, where prophets had spoken for God time and again. It was the spiritual heart of Israel. And right there, of all places, where people should have recognized the Messiah first, there was only a tragic blindness. Jesus sees they missed the time of their visitation, meaning they failed to realize that God was visiting them. And that remains one of the greatest tragedies in the entire Bible. To stand so close to God's work, and completely miss what he is doing. Picture the scene. The crowd is still ecstatic, celebrating wildly. There is noise, shouting, footsteps, and endless energy. Yet in the middle of it all, Jesus stands, crying, staring silently at the city. Those are not tears of weakness. They are tears of love, truth, and prophetic sorrow. He sees the present, but he also sees what lies ahead. He sees the cost of their stubbornness, the coming destruction, and the ruin that would crush Jerusalem because they rejected the way of peace. The very man they welcome as king is weeping as a prophet and savior. And right here, we find a profound lesson for our lives. We often mistake religious activity for real spiritual awareness. Jerusalem was packed with sacred symbols, rich history, religious traditions, and passionate pilgrims. But none of that guaranteed that anyone was actually listening to God. That warning still rings true today. You can be surrounded by faith, listen to sermons, memorize holy scriptures, speak all the right religious words, attend spiritual events, and still completely miss the moment God is calling your heart. You can stand right outside the temple, but be miles away from God's heart. Jesus speaks of peace here, deepening the gravity of the moment. Jerusalem, whose very name means peace, failed to recognize the only path to it. They chased security, identity, and control, but refused to embrace the only one who could actually reconcile them. This strikes a painful, deeply human chord, because we are always searching for peace. Peace in money, in control, in outward religion, in the approval of others, or in quick fixes to our visible problems. But the peace of Christ is no temporary calm or quick fix. It is a deep peace born of reconciliation with God, embraced truth, and a surrendered heart. Furthermore, the tears of Jesus show us that true love is never indifferent. Today, many think love means accepting everything without ever confronting anything. But Christ shows a different love. He loves with deep tenderness, but also with absolute truth. He weeps because turning from God brings destruction. He weeps because sin is no game. He weeps because a hardened heart never ends well. His compassion never downplays the weight of our choices. And that mix of mercy and truth is what makes this moment so incredibly powerful. This isn't empty sentimentality. We are seeing the Savior carrying the deep weight of what this city is choosing for itself. There is also something deeply personal here, because Jerusalem is not just an ancient city in a Bible story. In a way, it represents the human heart when it is full of signs, full of opportunities called by God, and yet it remains closed. How often do we get emotional about spiritual things, but never truly surrender? How often do we hear the truth, but let it pass? How often do we see God's hand close, yet keep clinging to our own way? Jesus, weeping over Jerusalem, confronts us too, forcing us to ask if we recognize when God visits us, speaks to us, and calls us to return to Him. And there is a striking contrast between the crowd and Christ right now. The crowd sees the city. Maybe they dream of national glory, political restoration feasts, and visible victory. Jesus sees the same city and senses brokenness, missed opportunities, and inner resistance. This teaches us that God sees things so much deeper than we do. We look at the surface, but He looks at the heart. We celebrate appearances. He discerns spiritual realities. We might get swept up in the moment. He knows if there is true transformation or just fleeting excitement. That is why this scene does not interrupt the story. It deepens it. After the triumphal entry, the tears of Jesus reveal that the glory of the moment should not blind us to the gravity of what is happening. The King has arrived, yes, but not everyone is welcoming Him as they should. The holy city stands before the Holy One, yet many miss His visitation. And in the middle of this, Jesus responds not with instant anger, but with tears. Those tears are a message in themselves. They tell us that God's heart is not cold. They tell us that Christ did not come to condemn with indifference, but to call with love. They show us that even when we are lost in blindness, the Savior still shows compassion. And so while Jerusalem hums with chaos, religion, and expectation, we begin to understand something truly critical. This week will not just be a clash between Jesus and his physical enemies, but between God's love and the blindness of the human heart. If this message is touching you, subscribe to the channel as we keep sharing these powerful Bible stories with clarity, depth, and truth. 4. The cleansing of the temple, the holy zeal of the Son of God. After weeping over Jerusalem, Jesus does not walk away or retreat in silence. Instead, he heads straight toward the most sacred, visible, and symbolic place in the entire nation, the temple. Now the story shifts into a scene of direct confrontation. Because if weeping over Jerusalem revealed the Savior's wounded love, what happens next reveals his holiness, authority, and burning zeal for God's glory. To understand the weight of this moment, we must picture what the temple meant to the Jewish people. It was not just a religious building. It was the spiritual heart of Israel. It was the place of God's present sacrifice, prayer, forgiveness, teaching the law, and the very identity of the people. Everything about the temple spoke of the relationship between God and Israel. Its courts, its gates, its walls, its priests, and its rituals all showed that this was a set-apart place, a sacred space, a meeting point between a holy God and a nation called to worship him. But when Jesus enters, he does not find the reverence that this place deserved. He finds noise, commerce, tables, transactions, animals being sold, and money changers clinking coins. He finds an atmosphere that, instead of drawing hearts to God, was forcing attention onto human greed, convenience, and religious abuse. And this was no minor detail. During major pilgrimage seasons like Passover, crowds arrived from different regions with foreign currency and had to exchange money or buy animals for sacrifice. On its own, that had a practical purpose. The issue was not just that commerce existed near the temple, but what the system had become. A corrupt machine that pushed out true worship and stained a holy place with greed, manipulation, and cold hearts. Picture this scene clearly. The temple courtyard is buzzing with endless activity. You hear animals clinking coins, shouting merchants, arguments, heavy footsteps, and chaotic noise. People who had traveled to Jerusalem seeking prayer and quiet reverence stepped right into a marketplace. The sacred was buried under the noise of selfish interests. That is when Jesus acts with a fierce intensity that shakes everything. He flips the money changers' tables, drives out the sellers, disrupts the entire system, and shatters the false normal that so many had accepted as natural. This moment is striking because many people prefer a completely tamed version of Jesus, as if he never confronted anything, as if he only spoke of comfort and warmth. But here we see something essential. The same Christ who weeps with compassion also burns with holiness. The same one who enters in humility stands up with ultimate authority. The same one who loves deeply also confronts whatever profanes his Father's house. His gentleness is not weakness. His goodness does not mean tolerating spiritual rot. We must understand this. The love of Jesus is not a soft love that simply accepts everything. When Jesus declares that God's house should be a house of prayer and that they made it a den of thieves, he is not using empty words. He's exposing a massive spiritual distortion. The place built for meeting God had been taken over by human greed, exploiting the religious needs of the people. And that hits a sensitive spot. When faith loses its focus on God, it quickly turns into show commerce, control, or an empty system. On the outside, it might keep holy words, rituals, and structures, but inside, it drifts far from God's heart. The power of this scene is also prophetic. Jesus is not just correcting a temporary mess. He is pointing to a deeper crisis. The temple meant to reflect holiness. God was exposing the sickness of the human heart, linking back to a growing tension. Jerusalem had already shown deep spiritual blindness. Now the temple itself reveals religious corruption. This means the disease went far beyond the crowd or a few corrupt leaders. It was systemic rot, a complete detour from God's true purpose. That is why Jesus' actions were not extreme. They were absolutely necessary. This is the move of someone who loves truth too much to stay silent. You can almost feel the raw emotion of the moment. Tables crashing down, coins scattering across the stone floor, panicked animals and stunned faces in the crowd. The atmosphere shattered by the authority of a single man. But he was no ordinary man. He was the Son of God, entering his Father's house, declaring in word and deed that this desecration had to end. Nobody watching this could stay neutral. Some felt sheer terror, others grew furious, while others felt a mix of shame and awe. Because when true holiness collides with a corrupt system, things always shake loose. There is a deep lesson here for our lives today. This temple cleansing was not just some ancient event in Jerusalem. It still speaks to us because we still mix the sacred with our own selfish desires. We can use holy language while our hearts remain miles away from genuine worship. We can defend religious structures but lose the heart of prayer. We can talk about God while using faith to feed our own pride, convenience, and control. That is why this moment does more than expose the past. It forces us to look deep inside ourselves. It asks, what has crowded out God's rightful place in our hearts? It confronts the habits we tolerate, even when they no longer show true reverence. Here lies a powerful truth. Just as Jesus cleansed the physical temple, He wants to purify the inner temple of our own hearts. He does not just come to soothe our wounded feelings. He comes to clean out the rot and remove everything blocking true prayer, truth, and connection with God. Sometimes we want a Savior who only eases our pain, but ignores our internal compromises. But the biblical Jesus does not work that way. He loves us too much to leave us unchanged. His presence cleanses His authority, restores order, and His truth exposes us. Though uncomfortable, this is pure mercy. And this temple cleansing sets the stage for what happens next, because it does not just escalate His clash with religious leaders. It proves Jesus did not come to fit into a broken system, but to tear it down from the roots. His mission was never to accommodate empty religion or negotiate with it. He came to reveal the Father's true heart and pave the way for an authentic relationship with God. No wonder this act sparked even greater hostility from those who felt threatened. Jesus was not adjusting minor details. He was targeting deep interests, ancient habits, and the false security of an institution that looked holy, but desperately needed cleansing. This is why this scene fits so perfectly into Holy Week. First, we saw Jesus ride in as a different kind of king. Then we watched Him weep over Jerusalem's blindness. Now we see Him act with holy zeal right at the heart of Jewish worship, making the story more intense, deep, and clear. The Messiah did not come just to be praised. He came to expose hidden rot even in the most sacred places. This leaves us with a truth that is impossible to ignore. Jesus did not just come to save us from the punishment of sin. He came to root out everything that opposes God's holiness. That is why He enters the temple, flips tables, and disrupts their fake sense of order. Because Because where humanity had learned to tolerate spiritual compromise, Christ stands up to restore our true purpose. And so, amid clinking coins and rising dust, amid the shock and the sudden silence that followed, we begin to realize that this week will not be comfortable. The presence of Jesus does not just inspire us, it purifies us. He does not just draw us in, He confronts. He does not just comfort, He cleanses. 5 days of teaching, confrontation, and growing conspiracy. After such a dramatic moment in the temple, Jerusalem could no longer dismiss Jesus as just another teacher among many. His presence was impossible to ignore. He had entered as a king, wept over the city, and cleansed the nation's most sacred sanctuary. And now the coming days would see his every word land with heavy gravity, as if he were slicing open the city's heart and exposing everything hidden inside. Holy Week kept moving forward, and with it, a suffocating tension that could no longer be hidden. Jesus spent those final days teaching in Jerusalem. This is crucial because he does not retreat or hide after confronting the temple. He does not tone down his message or play it safe to avoid trouble. He keeps speaking, teaching, and exposing the truth. He does it right in the temple courtyards, out in the open, before the entire crowd, in front of his disciples, and right before the very authorities who saw him as a dangerous threat. That says everything about the character of Christ. He does not compromise the truth to keep the peace. He does not water down his message to avoid conflict. When the moment comes, he speaks with even sharper clarity. His teachings in those days were not empty crowd pleasers. They were not mere entertainment. They were words packed with authority, discernment, and spiritual judgment. Jesus spoke of the kingdom of God not as some distant, abstract idea, but as an urgent reality demanding an immediate response. He spoke of the human heart of accountability before God and the true meaning of obedience, of staying alert of religious hypocrisy, of loving others, of faithfulness, of coming judgment, and of the absolute urgency of recognizing what God was doing right then. His words did not just teach, they confronted and divided. Nobody walked away from Jesus unchanged. It is easy to picture the scene. Temple courtyards packed with crowds. Some came out of deep spiritual hunger, others from curiosity, and some from pure admiration. Some genuinely wanted to hear him, while others watched with suspicion. His disciples probably felt each day getting heavier, more intense. They were no longer on the quiet paths of Galilee or in remote villages. They were in Jerusalem, the seat of religious power, in the middle of Passover week, with thousands of eyes watching. Every word of Jesus echoed in a place where anything could trigger a reaction. And while the crowd listened in awe, the religious leaders grew harder. The chief priests, the scribes, the Pharisees, and the elders. These rival groups did not always agree. But when it came to Jesus, they started finding common ground. He had to be stopped, not just because his teaching drew crowds, but because it unmasked them. Jesus exposed the exact areas they wanted to protect their authority, their prestige, their twisted views of faith, their control over the people. He did not attack out of spite. He simply exposed the massive gap between religious show and true obedience to God. This is the tension turns dangerous. When truth confronts a humble heart, it leads to repentance. But when it confronts a proud heart, it often breeds hatred. And that is exactly what was happening. Instead of yielding to the truth, many leaders began searching for ways to trap him, discredit him, or trip him up with words. They asked tough, calculated questions that sounded spiritual, but were designed to lure him into a trap. They wanted to force him to say something they could use against him, whether before the crowd or the Roman rulers. Yet time and again, Jesus answers with a wisdom that completely silences his enemies. It must have been incredible to watch. Men highly trained in the law, experts at debating and interpreting, arguing in public, were facing a teacher who did not just know the scriptures, but spoke with an authority that went far beyond human scholarship. Jesus did not just answer well, he exposed what lay behind the questions, discerning their true intent. He cut straight to the heart of the matter, exposing their malice with a single reply. This is why the conflict kept growing. It was not just that Jesus taught differently. He taught with real authority, exposing the spiritual bankruptcy of those who claimed to own religious truth. The people saw the difference. His words carried life. His warnings rang with truth. He did not sound like someone reciting stale formulas, but like someone who knew the Father and revealed his will with perfect clarity. And as some listened with deep admiration, others burned with growing hatred inside. During these days, his warnings against hypocrisy also grew sharper. Jesus spoke with fierce conviction against those who burdened others with heavy demands, yet never lived with sincerity before God. He denounced showy religion piety put on for a performance, and obedience turned into a mere facade. Hearts obsessed with outward appearances, while filled with pride and corruption inside. This moment is crucial because it shows Jesus was not interested in keeping a false peace. He chose to speak the truth, even if it sped up the conflict. This hits home today, where we still risk a faith built on appearance, on image, habit, and what is visible, while our inner life remains completely untouched before God. Around this time, Jesus also spoke prophetically about the future warning of a coming judgment on Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. That must have sounded terrifying to those listening. The temple seemed solid, majestic, almost untouchable. But Jesus looked beyond the stone, the marble, and the grandeur. He saw that physical structures cannot sustain a hollow spiritual reality forever. Warning of days of anguish, of judgment, and of shaking. He also urged them to watch, to stay awake, and not to fall asleep spiritually during such a critical moment. This call to stay alert rings loud during Holy Week, because while the city buzzed outside, inside many people were fast asleep spiritually. And Jesus insists that his disciples cannot live distracted, acting as if nothing matters. That speaks directly to us today. There are moments in history and in our own lives where we cannot afford to live numb, superficial, or distracted. When God calls, confronting us and moving the pieces decisively, we need discernment, vigilance, and a listening heart. Yet while this played out in public, a dark conspiracy was brewing in the shadows. Jesus' words were no longer just annoying. They threatened key interests and exposed power structures, weakening the grip of those secure in their status. That is when the resolve to eliminate him began to grow. It was no longer just about discrediting him. Now they wanted him gone, making the atmosphere of this story feel heavier than ever. While Jesus calmly teaches, the shadow of conspiracy creeps behind the scenes. While he speaks of truth, his enemies plot in secret. While he remains visible and transparent, they move in the dark corners of intrigue. This forms a powerful contrast. Jesus does not run, nor does he search for an escape route to avoid suffering. He does not try to save his reputation or his life. He just keeps teaching, keeps walking, keeps speaking. This only makes sense if we remember one crucial detail. He knew this was all part of his journey. He was not losing control, nor was he blindsided by events. Even as the plot thickened, Jesus acted with total serenity because his mission did not rest on human opinion, but on the Father's will. And this hits right at our everyday lives, because when we face opposition, rejection, or misunderstanding, our first instinct is often to stay quiet, to back down, or blend in to avoid making waves. But Jesus shows a different strength, not a proud hardness, but an unshakable faithfulness. He knows who he is. He knows what he must do, and he knows that the truth cannot be watered down just to make others feel comfortable. That is a deeply necessary lesson for any generation. That is why these days in Jerusalem were not just a simple pause between the triumphal entry and the cross. They were critical days filled with teaching, confrontation, and revelation. During this time, Jesus exposes the human heart and strengthens his disciples. He warns about what lies ahead, making it clear that God's kingdom cannot be reduced to mere rituals, appearances, or political expectations. Meanwhile, hostility keeps growing, and the conspiracy begins to close in like a dark shadow around him. Holy Week moves forward with an ever-increasing intensity. You can already feel the tension tightening in the story. Truth continues to shine through the voice of Jesus, but the darkness is also organizing. Right in the middle of this tension, as the city fills with words, questions, traps, and hidden plots, the story prepares to enter an even more painful dimension. Betrayal will no longer come only from the outside, but from someone who walked very close to the teacher. Chapter 6. The Decision of Judas. When the heart wanders before the feet, and just as the tension in Jerusalem becomes unbearable, as Jesus' words still echo with truth, and the conspiracy of his enemies begins to take shape, the story enters an even more painful phase, because the danger is no longer just on the outside, coming from the priests, the scribes, or the leaders trying to silence him. Now the fracture comes from within, from the inner circle, from one of the 12. That makes everything much darker. It is one thing to face declared enemies, but quite another to be betrayed by someone who walked with you and ate with you, who heard your teachings and saw the works of God with his own eyes. Judas Iscariot was no stranger, not someone who had only heard of Jesus from afar. He was part of the inner circle. He was there for moments others never witnessed. He heard parables explained in private. He witnessed miracles that left crowds amazed. He walked the very same dusty roads as the other disciples. He saw the sick healed, the possessed set free, crowds fed, and hearts confronted by the truth. He shared a table with the teacher, yet none of that stopped his heart from hardening. Here lies a very serious, uncomfortable, yet deeply real truth. External closeness to the holy does not always mean internal transformation. You can be very close to the truth and still refuse to surrender to it. You can live alongside the sacred, hear the right words, participate in a faithful community, and still harbor ambition, resentment, duplicity, or love for other things. Judas is a living warning of this. He did not fall in an instant, as if he decided to betray Jesus overnight without any prior warning signs. What we see in his final betrayal is the visible result of an internal distance that had been growing for a long time. Scripture reveals that Judas had a twisted relationship with money, and that detail is key, because a hardened heart rarely begins with a massive scandal, but with small inner compromises, a tolerated greed, a disloyalty quietly fed in the shadows, an unresigned frustration, or a misguided expectation of who Jesus should be and what he should do. Perhaps Judas, like many others back then, expected a Messiah aligned with his own ideas of power or visible success. Perhaps he grew disappointed, seeing that Jesus was not taking the path he envisioned. But beyond the unwritten details, the outcome is clear. His heart began to turn away long before his feet walked toward the chief priests. This makes the phrase, summarizing this moment, even more profound. The heart wanders before the feet, because no one truly betrays in a single moment. First it grows cold inside. Then it stops listening with humility. First it gets used to living with the sacred without trembling, without surrender, without genuine reverence. First it starts to negotiate on the inside, which eventually leads to bargaining with actions. Judas eventually kissed the teacher to betray him. But long before that, he had allowed something to break in the quiet spaces of his soul. Now imagine the sheer weight of this scene from a human perspective. While Jerusalem burns with religious and political tension, and while Jesus' enemies look for a way to capture him without causing a public riot, Judas becomes the key piece they need. He knew the group's movements. He knew when Jesus would slip away from the crowds. He knew how to approach without raising suspicion. And so he goes to bargain with the chief priests. That gesture is cold and dark. It is the exact moment a living relationship turns into a mere transaction. The man who had listened to the words of life prepares to trade the teacher for money. Here the story touches a deep human and spiritual nerve, because it is not just about the act of handing Jesus over, but what it truly means to reduce the Lord to an object of convenience. Judas does not just betray a friend or fail as a disciple. He does something far worse. He turns Christ into a bargaining chip. This reveals how far a heart can wander when it stops loving truth and serves another master. That is why the tragedy of Judas is not just history, it is an uncomfortable mirror for every generation. Because every time someone uses the sacred for personal gain, every time they put self-interest above loyalty to God, every time they maintain an outward appearance of closeness, but have already sold out their inner devotion, the echo of Judas is felt once again. We must also realize that betrayal from within hurts in a special way. Jesus knew what was coming. Yes, nothing caught him off guard, but that does not mean the betrayal did not hurt deeply on a human level. Being handed over by your own wounds you in a completely different way. And this detail brings Holy Week even closer to our human experience. Because many of us know what it feels like to be hurt, not by a distant enemy, but by someone close. Someone we knew. Someone we trusted completely. Judas's story reminds us that the pain of betrayal was part of the path Christ chose. He did not just carry public rejection. He also endured the deep, intimate wound of disloyalty. Yet it is incredible to see how Jesus remains Lord even in that darkness. Judas's betrayal does not derail God's sovereign plan. This does not mean evil won the day. Judas is fully responsible for his sin, yet history continues to move forward under the Father's sovereign purpose. This does not lessen the weight of his choice, but it reveals something profound. Even when human hearts turn to darkness, God remains in absolute control. To human eyes, it might look like betrayal breaks everything, but in God's eyes, not even this can stop the work of redemption already in motion. This moment stands as a solemn warning for our faith today, because many believe the greatest spiritual danger always comes from the outside. The world opposition, persecution, hostile ideas. And yes, those are real. But Judas's story shows that the most dangerous threats can grow inside the heart of someone in the right environment. Walking alongside people of faith is not enough, nor is hearing the truth or being part of a community. The critical question always points inward. What is actually ruling your heart? Who has your ultimate loyalty? What are we harboring in secret while keeping up appearances on the outside? This brings an even heavier emotional weight to the story. While Jesus continues teaching, loving, and walking resolutely toward his destiny, Judas is already calculating, negotiating, and serving his own interests. One steps forward in obedience, while the other shrinks back in his soul. One surrenders in love, the other betrays for greed. One walks to the cross to save, the other walks to the priests to sell. The contrast is jarring, which is exactly why this part of Holy Week is so powerful. There is also something chilling about the normal front Judas maintains. We do not see someone shouting that they have abandoned their faith. He is not making some grand public declaration. Betrayal starts creeping in beneath the surface, in the dark shadows, where a clean outward appearance can still be maintained. And that is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Sin that grows in secret is always more destructive than what is out in the open. When hidden, it festers without confrontation, without repentance, and without restraint. This is why this moment does more than just build dramatic tension. It deepens the spiritual challenge of the entire story. Holy Week does not just show the hatred of Jesus' visible enemies. It also reveals the tragedy of a human heart hardening while standing right next to the light. Judas is more than just a historical villain. He is proof that no one should ever rely on simple outward closeness to holy things. True faithfulness comes from a surrendered, watchful, humble, and sincere heart before God. And so, as the external conspiracy finally finds an open door, inside the atmosphere grows even heavier. The betrayal has officially been set in motion. The circle tightens. Night falls, and we begin to sense that the coming Passover will be far more than just another quiet dinner between a master and his disciples. It will be the stage where the light of Christ's love shines brightest, right as the darkness of the human heart reveals its most painful side. 7. The Last Supper, the covenant, the bread, and the cup. With betrayal silently unfolding, pressure building in Jerusalem, and the shadow of conspiracy looming closer, we arrive at one of the most intimate nights of all, the deepest, most sacred night of Holy Week. Jesus gathers with his disciples to celebrate the Passover. This is no ordinary meal. This is not some casual dinner. It is a table heavy with memory, symbolism, tension, and love. Everything happening in these momentous days converges in this upper room, a prepared space where the teacher sits down with his followers one last time before the cross. To truly feel the weight of this moment, we must remember what Passover meant to the Jewish people. It was not just an annual religious ritual. It was the living memory of the night God rescued Israel from Egypt, a celebration of freedom of the Exodus, of judgment passing over blood-marked homes, the beginning of a whole new story for an enslaved nation. Every single element of that meal held deep meaning. The bread, the cup, the bitter herbs, the solemn atmosphere, the words spoken around the table. Everything pointed back to the God who had redeemed his people with a mighty hand. Right there in that very moment, Jesus does something that alters history forever. He takes this ancient, familiar celebration and floods it with a spiritual depth they could not yet fully grasp. What had marked a past rescue for centuries now became the announcement of their ultimate redemption. Passover was not being canceled. It was being fulfilled. What had once been a shadow was now meeting the very reality it always pointed to. Picture the scene. It is night. The streets of Jerusalem are buzzing with the festival. But inside the upper room, the atmosphere is quiet. Flickering oil lamps cast soft shadows against the walls. The disciples gather around the table, completely unaware of the heavy weight of the hours that lie just ahead. Jesus sits with them, but his words and actions carry a new gravity. There is no frantic rush, even though his time is short. No panic, even with betrayal on the horizon. Only solemnity, tenderness, and a deep peace that does not come from ignorance, but from complete obedience to the Father's plan. During dinner, Jesus takes the bread. When he breaks it, he does not just present it as part of the ritual. He connects it to himself, naming it as his own body. That simple gesture must have absolutely stunned everyone at the table. Bread, the basic symbol of survival, was now bound directly to Christ himself. It was as if Jesus was declaring, "I am the sacrifice. I am the one given for you. I am the true food of life." This broken bread was no mere liturgy. It was a vivid preview of exactly what was about to unfold. Then he takes the cup. And right there, something truly massive happens. The Passover cup already held a deep place in the memories of the people, but Jesus describes it as the blood of the new covenant poured out to wash away sins. Here the story reaches a stunning theological depth. Throughout the entire Bible, the idea of a covenant is always tied to the bond between God and His people. A covenant was never a casual deal. It was a solemn reality, a bond forged with absolute seriousness and promises, held together by heavy responsibility and often blood. Now Jesus declares His own blood seals this new covenant. Through His self-sacrifice, God is permanently opening up the path of reconciliation for His people. This means that the Last Supper is not just some emotional farewell before a painful departure. It is the moment Jesus explains His own death ahead of time. He does not let His disciples face the cross without understanding. From the table, He shows them what it will mean. He will not die as a helpless victim. He is giving Himself up as the ultimate lamb. This is no empty tragedy. It is a saving sacrifice, not just the result of human malice. It is the supreme expression of God's love and purpose. And this is powerful, because while the world plots violence, Christ builds meaning. While Judas moves forward with betrayal, Jesus moves forward with His sacrifice. While others plot arrest schemes and condemnation, He is focused on His disciples, their spiritual preparation, and giving them real understanding of what is ahead. That difference reveals the beauty of Christ's heart. In the hours leading up to His suffering, He does not withdraw. He keeps giving, revealing, and loving. There is also a massive emotional contrast at this table. On one hand, it is a moment of close fellowship and a shared meal. On the other, it is heavy with a quiet sadness. Jesus knows this gathering is marked by a looming farewell. He knows one will betray Him. He knows the rest will be shaken. He knows Peter will deny Him. He knows that in a few hours this table leads to the garden to arrest, and arrest to the cross. Yet He stays, speaks, teaches, breaks bread, and lifts the cup. There is no coldness in Him, no emotional distance, just a sacred mix of strength, love, and quiet grief. This moment teaches us something profound about the very center of Christian faith. The heart of the gospel is not some abstract concept or moral code. It is a person giving himself up. It is Christ offering His body and shedding His blood. That is why the Last Supper is so deeply etched in the Church's memory. Every time we remember the bread and the cup, we are not just repeating some empty tradition. Instead, we proclaim that our hope does not rest on our own merits, but on the sacrifice of the Son of God. Salvation does not come from human effort, but from God's loving initiative. Besides, the table of the Last Supper shows that Jesus did not just come to talk about the kingdom. He came to establish it through His own sacrificed life. He does not hand His disciples a message separate from Himself. He offers His very self, and that completely changes how we relate to God. It is no longer just about remembering an ancient rescue from Egypt. Now we receive by faith the work of the Messiah, who personally fulfills everything the Passover foreshadowed: the sacrificed lamb, the protective blood, the rescue from slavery, the birth of a new people. It all finds its completion in Christ. And this holds a powerful lesson for us today. Many people search for peace with God through endless effort, religion guilt promises, or outward rituals. But the Last Supper reminds us that access to God is not opened by what we build, but by what Jesus chose to give. The new covenant is born from His blood, not our performance. Forgiveness cannot be bought. Reconciliation cannot be manufactured. Grace is simply received because Christ gave Himself for us. That comforts, challenges, and transforms us all at once. Yet, in the midst of this glorious depth, the tension never fades. In fact, it grows even tighter, because at the very table where Jesus speaks of covenant, Judas is sitting. In the exact space where grace is declared, betrayal is in motion. At this very meal, where the Master offers pure, unconditional love, the deep darkness of the human heart is already present. That contrast makes the scene hit even harder. The light shines brilliantly, precisely because the night is closing in. That is why the Last Supper is more than just a calm, sacred moment, though it certainly is that. It is also a prelude filled with holy tension. It is the threshold between his public teaching and his direct suffering. It is the table where Jesus hands his disciples the key to understanding the cross. It is where the ancient Passover opens up to reveal its true fulfillment. It is the moment the broken bread and poured cup declare that the Redeemer will not run from the sacrifice, but embrace it willingly. And as night deepens over Jerusalem, while the city bustles with holiday crowds and the quiet stirrings of a dark conspiracy, we begin to feel that this supper is far more than a farewell. It is the revelation of God's love in the form of a covenant. It is the promise of a body given up and blood poured out. It is the table where Israel's past and redemption's future meet in Jesus himself. And it is the final quiet moment before the story plunges straight into the darkness of the garden, the agony of prayer, and the most painful hours of Holy Week. If you are learning something new from this study, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps us share God's Word with so many more people. 8. The washing of the feet. Greatness on its knees. And right in the middle of a meal so heavy with meaning. Just as the bread and cup were revealing the depth of the covenant and the weight of what was coming, Jesus does something that must have left the room dead silent. He does not just speak of sacrifice or warn them that his body will be broken and his blood spilled. He also shows them with an unforgettable image what the heart of God's kingdom actually looks like. He gets up from the table, sets aside his outer robe. He takes a towel, ties it around himself like a servant, and starts washing his disciples' feet. To us today, this scene might look simply tender or symbolic, but back then it held far more weight. The streets were dirt, stone, and dust. Everyone walked in open sandals. Feet would be dirty, tired, and scarred from the road. Upon entering a house, especially for a major event, washing feet was a practical need and a sign of hospitality. Yet it was a lowly task, usually reserved for servants or slaves. No one with authority would ever choose that position, let alone someone their followers called Master and Lord. And that is exactly where it hits hard. Jesus, the Son of God, who entered Jerusalem as King, who wept over the city, who cleansed the temple and spoke with authority before leaders and crowds, now kneels down before his disciples and touches the dust of their feet. The scene is so powerful because of that stark contrast. The highest places himself in the lowest position. The Holy One kneels before men who are still slow to understand, fragile in faith, and flawed in character. The Lord takes the place of a servant. Imagine the room in that upper chamber. Just moments ago, the table was marked by solemn covenant words. Broken bread, a raised cup, a heavy silence, thick tension. And suddenly, Jesus moves with a purpose no one quite understands. The disciples surely looked at each other confused. Maybe some felt immediate discomfort. Maybe others did not know how to react, because this was no simple chore. There was something in Jesus's gesture that completely shattered human logic of power, honor, and hierarchy. And when he reaches Peter, that confusion bursts out in pure resistance. Peter cannot easily accept his master doing this. In his mind, Jesus is too high to bow down like this. It feels wrong, almost unbearable. Something inside him screams, "No way, you should not be doing this to me." and humanly speaking, it is easy to understand him. Because sometimes we also want a glorious, powerful, exalted God, but we do not know what to do when that glory shows up in radical humility. We struggle to accept greatness on its knees. We are more impressed by dominating power than by love that bows down. But Jesus insists, and his reply makes it clear that this act runs much deeper. It is not just about teaching social modesty or setting a nice example of service. There is also a spiritual dimension. This washing points to the cleansing only Christ can give. Peter does not understand it at first. Then when he hears that without this washing he has no part with him, he reacts impulsively, wanting more than just his feet. But right there, another truth shines. Humans cannot purify themselves before God. We need Christ to wash us. We must receive that inner cleansing from him, which no human effort can ever achieve on its own. This gives the scene such beautiful depth. On one hand, Jesus is completely redefining greatness. On the other hand, he shows that fellowship with him requires being washed by him. Admiring him from afar or acknowledging his authority in theory is not enough. We must let him touch our lowest, dustiest, most human parts. We have to let his grace enter those areas we would probably prefer to hide. And this is still incredibly relevant today. Many people want Jesus as an inspiration, an example, or an admirable figure, but the gospel goes deeper. We need him to wash us, purify us, and share his very life with us. Washing their feet also reveals that true greatness in God's kingdom works differently than in the world. In the world, the great demand service and chase recognition, distancing themselves from the lowly, polishing their image and protecting their rank. But in Jesus, we see the exact opposite. True greatness does not fear coming down. It loses no dignity in serving. Instead, it shines brightest precisely when love drives it to bend low. This is one of the most revolutionary lessons of that entire night. The king is no less a king by serving. The Lord is no less Lord by kneeling. In fact, that is exactly where his authority shows its purest beauty. And this must have shaken the disciples deeply, as they still struggled with issues of status, importance, and proximity to the Master. Like so many of us, they argued about who was greatest, who would secure the highest seat, and who would stand closest to power when the kingdom arrived. But Jesus cuts through that logic at the root. He does not offer abstract theories on humility. He gives them an unforgettable image. The Master with a towel, the Lord with a basin, the Son of God washing weary, dusty feet. In that light, this moment is no minor detail of the Last Supper. It is essential to understanding the heart of Christ. Because the cross that follows is that very same story, the descent of the highest into the place of a suffering servant. Washing feet is Calvary in miniature. First, Jesus bends down to wash. Then, he gives himself to save. First, he touches the dirt of the road. Then, he carries the sin of the world. First, he teaches with water and towel. Then, he redeems with blood and sacrifice. There is also immense tenderness in Jesus doing this on this specific night. He knows they are about to abandon him. He knows one will betray him and another will deny him. He knows confusion and fear are about to shatter everyone's hearts. Yet before heading to Gethsemane, he leaves them with this picture of humble love. He does not pull away or scold their weakness. He bends down and serves. This shows something beautiful about the character of Christ. Even knowing their flaws, he loves them to the very end. And here lies a powerful truth for daily life. Many long to be important, recognized, admired, and respected. But Jesus teaches that true greatness is not measured by who serves you, but by how much you are willing to love and serve. And not with some theatrical performative act, but through real quiet, humble, and costly service. In a world where everyone scrambles to climb up, Christ shows that in the kingdom, glory is revealed by descending. In a culture obsessed with image status and prestige, Jesus shows us that true love knows how to kneel without losing authority. Washing feet also challenges our spiritual pride. It is hard to serve, but it is just as hard to let Christ serve us. Many easily talk about faith, effort, discipline, and obedience, yet they squirm at admitting their deep need to be washed by grace. Even passionate Peter had to learn this. His emotional loyalty and sincere impulses were simply not enough. He had to receive what only Jesus could give. And so do we. We do not reach the Lord's table clean on our own. We get there because He bends down to us in mercy. So as the night deepens, while the table still echoes with the memory of the bread and the cup, while Judas carries the dark weight of his betrayal, and the cross silently draws near, Jesus leaves a lesson engraved on His disciples' hearts they will never forget. His kingdom is unlike human empires. Divine glory does not look like worldly pride. The authority of Christ does not crush, it serves. His greatness does not humiliate, it gives itself away. His love is more than words. It touches the dust, washes away the grime, and kneels right before His own. And so the story moves forward with an aching, beautiful intensity. Because after this lesson of humility and cleansing, after this picture of the Master becoming a servant, the story approaches the moment when that very humility will be tested in the deepest, rawest anguish. The towel will soon give way to the garden. Water will turn to sweat of agony. And the heart that bent to wash feet now prepares to surrender in prayer to the Father's will on the darkest night of Holy Week. Chapter 9. Gethsemane, the silent struggle before the cross. Right after that profound dinner, after the bread, the cup, the washing of feet, and those heavy words that already sounded like a goodbye, the story enters one of the most intense, sacred, and painful moments of Holy Week. Jesus walks out with His disciples heading to the Mount of Olives, to a familiar place called Gethsemane. The name itself evokes a place of pressure, where oil is crushed out under heavy weight. It is deeply symbolic, because right there, the Lord's soul would be crushed under the weight of a burden no human could ever fully measure. Night has fallen over Jerusalem. The city hums in the distance with Passover life. But up here on the mount, the atmosphere shifts. There is darkness, silence, broken only by footsteps, snapping twigs, and shallow breathing. Gethsemane is no place for a crowd. This is not the temple buzzing with voices, or the triumphal entry with cloaks and palms. It is isolated, intimate, raw, and that carries a deep spiritual power. Because our most decisive battles are not always fought in public. Often they are waged in secret when no one is watching, when there is no applause, and the soul stands alone before God. Jesus arrives there knowing exactly what lies ahead. He is not confused, nor is He discovering pain as He goes. But that does not make the anguish any lighter. In fact, knowing exactly what is coming makes this moment even more agonizing. The Gospels show Him sinking into a profound sorrow, an anguish so heavy that His words echo the unbearable weight of His soul. He says His soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. That is no poetic exaggeration. It is the cry of a real, holy, agonizing grief, touching the depths of His humanity. We must pause here, because Gethsemane reveals what we often forget. Jesus did not walk to the cross numb or disconnected from pain. He was not a cold, stoic figure, immune to trembling struggle or inner dread. He felt the real agony of what was coming. The physical horror, yes, but also something far deeper. The weight of the cup he had to drink, the crushing judgment, the terrifying spiritual gravity of bearing the sins of the world. The cross was not just wood nails and public humiliation. It was a spiritual weight no other man could carry. Picture the scene. Jesus takes Peter, James, and John a little deeper. These disciples had witnessed the high points of his glory. Now they witness his pain. The contrast is stunning. They had seen him shine on the Mount of Transfiguration. Now they watch him buckle in the shadows of Gethsemane. They had heard him speak with authority to crowds. Now they see him crushed by a grief they cannot grasp. The Master who had calmed raging seas is entering an inner storm only he can face. Then Jesus asks them for something simple, yet deeply revealing to watch with him. He is not asking for a strategy or a defense, just their alert presence in prayer, inviting them right into his darkest, heaviest hour. And yet, in that very moment, human fragility strikes again. While the Lord wrestles in prayer, his disciples drift off to sleep. It is a painful, deeply human contrast. Jesus awake in agony, his friends asleep in weakness. He carries the weight of the universe. They cannot keep watch for even 1 hour. This strikes a deep chord in the human experience, because in our darkest trials, we often find that even the people closest to us cannot truly grasp the weight of what we carry. They might love us and mean well, but they cannot always stand watch with us in our deepest pain. Gethsemane exposes that profound loneliness. Jesus is not physically alone, but he enters a dimension of suffering no disciple can ever share. There is a part of this road that only he can walk. Then comes one of the most heartbreaking prayers in the Bible. Jesus turns to the Father, asking that this cup pass from him if possible. Yet he immediately yields. Not my will, but yours be done. Here we witness one of the absolute purest acts of obedience in history. This is no mechanical submission or empty resignation. It is obedience pierced by raw agony. Jesus does not deny the bitter cup, minimize the suffering, or pretend it is easy. He brings his anguish before the Father with absolute honesty, and yet surrenders completely to the divine will. That is what makes Gethsemane so powerful. Here, we do not just see pain, but obedient pain. Not just anguish, but surrendered anguish. We do not just see fear of the cup. We see the perfect love of the Son, who, feeling the full weight of the trial, chooses to press on in faithfulness to the Father. This holds immense value for our life of faith. Many believe that obeying God means no struggle, no trembling, no feeling of anguish. But Gethsemane teaches us the opposite. True obedience is not about avoiding pain, but saying yes to the Father, even when the soul trembles. Besides, this moment reveals the moral perfection of Christ in a deeply moving way. Where the first Adam fell in a garden, the second Adam stands firm in another. Where human will rebelled against God at the dawn of history, here the perfect human will of the Son surrenders completely to the Father. Gethsemane is not just an emotional scene. It is a massive theological moment. The beloved Son embraces the path of redemption with an obedience that restores, replaces, and conquers right where humanity had fallen. There is also something visually striking in the repetition of his prayers. Jesus goes back to the Father again and again, not rushing through this heavy moment with a quick phrase. He perseveres, prays, bows down, returns, finds his disciples sleeping, and prays again. This gives the scene the rhythm of a quiet, almost suffocating struggle. The night presses on. Time slips away. The pressure intensifies. And yet, in that hidden place, victory begins to take shape. Before facing the cross publicly, Christ triumphs in the intimacy of prayer. That is the key. Gethsemane shows that great visible victories are born in invisible battles. Later, the world will see the arrest, the trial, the cross, the empty tomb. Jesus is not running. He is not negotiating an escape. He is not bending under the pressure. He is declaring through tears and agony that the Father's will must be done. This surrender is the gateway to everything that follows. The image of the sleeping disciples serves as a serious spiritual warning. Jesus tells them to watch and pray so they will not fall into temptation, because the spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. This phrase echoes through centuries and remains true today. Many have good intentions, sincerity, and deep affection for Christ, but they fail to realize how fragile they are without prayer. Peter surely felt strong. Hours later, he would discover how weak he truly was. Gethsemane reveals that human confidence without spiritual vigilance is a dangerous illusion. There is another moving detail. Jesus enters this struggle not for his own sins, but for ours. His agony is not born of personal guilt, for he knew no sin. It comes from the holy weight of the mission he was born to fulfill. He is drinking ahead of time the bitterness we could never endure. He is stepping into the darkness that belonged to us. He is feeling the approach of the suffering that will open our path to peace with God. This is why Gethsemane inspires not just admiration, but deep gratitude and reverence. While the city remains mostly blind to what is happening in this dark corner of the mount, as the disciples battle their sleep and the night grows even thicker, the heart of the story intensifies. Jesus on his knees, agonizing in prayer to the Father and accepting the cup, reveals the invisible price of redemption. Before the blood on the cross, there is sweat of agony in the garden. Before the cry of Calvary, there is quiet surrender in Gethsemane. Before men seize him, the Son has already given himself in obedience. And when he finally rises from prayer, we no longer see him shrink back. The anguish does not vanish as if it never existed, but obedience is sealed. The hour has come. The betrayer approaches. Torches will soon shatter the darkness of the garden. Footsteps of an armed crowd are drawing near. And then we understand something decisive. The cross did not start when they nailed Jesus to the wood. In a way, it began here, in Gethsemane, where the Son of God fully accepted the cup out of love, fighting a quiet battle before the visible violence of his arrest. Number 10. The arrest and betrayal. The darkness seems to advance, and after that quiet struggle in Gethsemane, after deep prayer, anguish surrendered to the Father, and that obedience sealed in the intimacy of the night, the story suddenly enters a scene of noise, motion, and violence. What had been silence, shadow, and inner crying is now shattered by hurried footsteps, lights flashing in the dark, and the sound of an armed crowd approaching the garden. The hour Jesus spoke of has finally arrived. Imagine the contrast. Just moments ago, the atmosphere was defined by prayer, by wet soil beneath his knees, by the heavy sleep of the disciples, and the unseen intensity of spiritual war. Suddenly, the darkness of the Mount of Olives fills with torches, lanterns, harsh voices, clashing metal orders, and heavy breathing. The night is no longer just night now. It feels loaded with threat. Gethsemane stops being a sanctuary of prayer and becomes the stage for the arrest of God's Son. Leading that crowd is Judas. That detail hits hard, because the traitor does not hide among the enemies as a stranger. He leads the way. He knows this place. He knows where to find Jesus away from the crowds. He knows how to hand over the Master without sparking a public riot in the city. And that makes the betrayal even more bitter. It is not just that Judas chose to sell Jesus. He is using their past closeness to help the darkness advance. What should have been sweet communion has become a tool of betrayal. Then comes one of the most painful moments of all Holy Week, the kiss of Judas. A sign that usually meant affection, respect, or closeness is used as the agreed signal to mark the one to arrest. That image is chilling because of its contradiction. Betrayal does not arrive with an open shout of hate, but wrapped in a mask of intimacy. Evil often masks itself in the language of affection. A gesture of peace becomes a weapon of betrayal. This reveals something deeply unsettling about the corrupted human heart. It does not just reject the truth, it also hides its darkness behind a clean, holy exterior. Yet Jesus does not panic or react in shocked disbelief. He does not pull back in fear. He does not lose control. He stands firm, fully present, completely surrendered to his Father's will. Absolute chaos erupts all around him, but he remains calm. This serenity does not come from passive surrender, but from total certainty in his mission. It is stunning because we would expect panic flight or a desperate fight. Instead, Jesus stands tall in the darkness, like someone who has already won the battle in private and is now simply stepping into the next phase of his path. This exposes a central truth of the entire story. Jesus is not being dragged away kicking and screaming against his will. He is no helpless victim caught in a trap. Yes, human evil is at work, and injustice is closing in. Yes, the arrest is happening. But above it all, Christ is giving himself up willingly. He had already declared that no one takes his life. He lays it down of his own accord, and this moment proves it. Even with an armed crowd approaching, even with betrayal, and despite human authority and organized violence, none of this means things have slipped from God's hands. What looks like a victory for darkness still unfolds under the Father's absolute sovereignty. During the arrest, one of the disciples reacts with sudden violence. The Gospels record that he draws a sword and strikes the high priest's servant, cutting off his ear. It is a flash of chaos and impulse, a desperate, frantic attempt to stop what is happening, and it is easy to understand why. Seeing their teacher surrounded, betrayed, and seized must have been unbearable for those who still did not fully comprehend that this was exactly how things had to unfold. But Jesus stops this reaction immediately. He will not allow his kingdom to be defended by human violence. He will not let the misguided passion of his followers replace obedience to the Father's design. This moment is deeply revealing because it shows that Jesus rejects both the treachery of Judas and the misguided defense of Peter. One betrays him, another tries to save him the wrong way. And right between these extremes, Jesus stands, faithful to God's purpose. He will not be captured out of cowardice, nor saved by human swords. His path will be defined neither by an enemy's betrayal, nor a friend's reckless impulse. It is defined solely by the Father's will. In fact, Jesus makes it clear that he could call upon heavenly forces that no human power could ever resist. He did not lack power, and he was far from helpless. The one being arrested in that dark garden was the commander of heavenly legions. This makes the scene even more profound. The quiet strength and meekness of Christ is not weakness. His surrender does not stem from a lack of options. He does not give up because he has to. He yields because he chooses to obey. This distinction changes how we view the entire arrest. We are not watching someone conquered by enemies, but a completely obedient son, allowing history to follow the redemptive path determined by the Father. Meanwhile, the disciples begin to scatter, broken and panicked by fear. The heavy night grows even darker and more painful. The same group that just shared dinner listening to his deep, intimate words, who watched him wash their feet and heard his warnings, now feels the crushing weight of reality. The arrest is no longer a threat. It is a reality. The torches are burning. Angry hands have seized Jesus. Gethsemane is no longer a safe haven, and in the sheer panic, many run away. This flight exposes a deep human truth. When real pressure hits, the courage we thought we had so easily crumbles. Just hours ago, they promised loyalty. Now, fear reigns. Hours ago, they shared a table. Now, they scatter. Hours ago, Jesus asked them to watch and pray. Now the trial is here, laying bare human weakness. This strikes a deep, familiar chord within us, because we often believe we will be strong until the storm actually hits. We convince ourselves our love is far firmer than it truly is. This betrayal does not just reveal the evil of his enemies, it exposes the frailty of his closest friends. Yet, at the center of it all stands Christ. Not the chaos, not the mob, not Judas, not the sword or the retreat. Jesus stands serene, resolute, conscious, and surrendered. He anchors everything. Looking only at the human elements, it seems darkness has completely won. The traitor did his part. The armed mob arrived. The followers scatter. Violence erupts, and injustice takes physical shape. Every sign points to evil gaining ground, as if the light itself is being snuffed out. But biblical faith demands a deeper look. Darkness is advancing, yes, but it is not securing the ultimate victory. It is allowed only for a season, so that God can work out his redemptive plan through it. This holds a profound truth for our lives today. There are moments when our own lives mimic that dark night times, when everything seems to fall apart all at once. Injustice spreads. Loved ones let us down. Fear fills the air, and what seemed secure shatters. We feel as though darkness has won. Yet Gethsemane and the arrest of Jesus teach us that appearances do not tell the whole story. Sometimes, right when evil seems to be closing in, God is working with a quiet precision we cannot yet comprehend. This moment also marks a massive turning point in Holy Week. Up to this point, Jesus taught, confronted, shared a meal, and prayed in agony. Now begins his surrender into the hands of sinners. The story enters a phase of trials, humiliation, beatings, and condemnation. Gethsemane is left behind. The night of the arrest unlocks a cascade of injustices that will rush forward one after another. And yet, what we just witnessed leaves one absolute certainty in our hearts. Christ does not go to the cross in darkness. He is guided by perfect obedience. That is why this arrest is not just a sad scene of betrayal and capture. It reveals the absolute resolve of our Savior. Judas kisses him. The crowd closes in. A disciple strikes. The rest run. But Jesus stands firm. He does not hide or fight back, refusing to break the Father's plan. Night closes in on the garden, and darkness seems to advance. But what looks like a victory for evil is actually the first step on the visible path to the cross, where God's love will shine with a strength that darkness can never destroy. Part 11. The unjust trials the innocent before the powerful. After the arrest in the dark garden, the story does not stop for a single second. Jesus is no longer surrounded by the tense calm of Gethsemane, but dragged into a relentless chain of interrogations, accusations, and insults that will reveal with growing cruelty just how far human injustice will go when it chooses to blind itself to the truth. The night is still dark, but that darkness is no longer just on the mountainside. Now it seems to have crawled into the hearts of those with the power to judge, condemn, and manipulate. First, Jesus is brought before the religious authorities, and this carries heavy weight because he is not being judged by pagans who ignore the law, but by men who knew the scriptures. Men who held spiritual authority and spoke for God to the people. That makes everything so much more painful. The issue was not a lack of biblical knowledge. It was a hardened heart. They knew the promises. They knew the Messiah's language. They knew Israel's history. Yet when the Holy One stood before them, they refused to surrender to the truth. They chose to protect their status rather than recognize God's messenger. Picture the scene. Jesus arrives, bound. Night still hangs heavy over Jerusalem. There is hurried movement, quiet whispers, anxious faces, and meetings that offer no peace or justice, only rush and calculation. This is not the atmosphere of a clean, fair trial. It is the setup of a verdict already decided in advance, now just scrambling for excuses to justify itself. From the start, it is clear they are not looking for truth. They want a condemnation. And that is when one of the most painful details emerges: the false testimonies. People line about Jesus, trying to build a case strong enough to destroy him. Yet even here, we see how fragile lies really are. The stories do not match up. The accusations fall apart. Malice wants to move forward, but it has to bend reality to do so. And that is still deeply human. When the heart rejects the truth, it often has to manufacture stories, twist words, exaggerate facts, and manipulate perspectives to support what it has already decided to do. Jesus, meanwhile, maintains an incredible composure. We are not looking at a desperate defendant trying to save face, nor is he anxious to answer every lie. He is not trapped by the urge to defend himself, as any of us would be. And that does not mean this moment was small or painless. It means he knows who he is. He knows why he is there, and he knows that not even human injustice can pull him from the Father's will. His silence in certain moments is not empty passivity. It is a holy strength. The innocent stands before a corrupt system, and without screaming to make his point, his quiet presence alone exposes the moral bankruptcy of his accusers. In the middle of this religious trial, the ultimate question of his identity is asked, striking the real core of the conflict. Because the issue with Jesus was never a mere political debate or some minor dispute over interpretations. The real question was who he was, his authority, his relationship with the Father, his identity as the Messiah, his standing before God. That was what hardened hearts found unbearable. When the truth of who he is comes to light, the high priest reacts with outrage. He tears his robes, and the charge of blasphemy is declared. From that point, there is no more need to pretend they are searching. To them, Jesus must die. And then the scene sinks even lower in human dignity. Then come the blows, the mockery, the spit, the physical and verbal abuse. The Son of God, the same one who entered Jerusalem as a humble king who washed feet, who prayed in agony in Gethsemane, is now treated with utter contempt. They blindfold him, strike him, and mock him as if he were a fraud. It is a humiliating, brutal scene, almost unbearable to watch with an open heart. Here we begin to feel deeply that the passion of Christ was not some abstract, symbolic suffering. It was real. It was physical, emotional, relational, and morally suffocating. The Holy One is treated as worthless by worthless men. But this story does not stop with the religious trials. Jesus is also dragged before Roman authority, adding another layer of tension. Under Roman rule in Judea, Jewish leaders faced political limits and needed the imperial power's intervention to execute a sentence of this scale. This is where Pilate enters the Roman governor, a man shaped by the logic of empire, a man used to keeping control, calculating stability, and measuring conflicts in terms of political convenience rather than moral truth. Here the scene becomes even more revealing, because on some level, Pilate senses that something is deeply wrong with all of this. He does not seem convinced of Jesus' guilt. He sees the envy, feels the pressure, and knows this is no ordinary criminal. However, his real struggle is not ignorance, but moral cowardice. He sees enough to sense that Jesus is innocent, but not enough to defend justice at any cost. And that is a deeply human tragedy. Some people do not fully love the truth, even if they recognize it in part. The problem is that recognizing it means nothing if you are not willing to pay the price to stand firm. Pilate speaks with Jesus. He maneuvers, seeking a way out, trying to wash his hands of the situation, both emotionally and politically, as if he could wash his hands of real responsibility. But the crowd presses on, the leaders demand it, the tension rises, and finally, he caves. And right here we find a massive lesson. Power without moral conviction always buckles under pressure. Pilate had the authority to stand firm, but he lacked the integrity to stand up for justice. That makes him a deeply tragic figure. He is not a religious fanatic who openly hates Christ, but neither is he a righteous man standing for truth. He is someone who watches, doubts, calculates, and ultimately gives in. Between these trials, Herod also appears, adding even more humiliation to Jesus' path. There is no sincere search for truth there, only empty curiosity and a craving for a spectacle. They want to witness a sign, treating the Lord like a prop for entertainment or mockery. And when he refuses to give them a show, they lash out with contempt. This is incredibly revealing. Not everyone rejects Christ with open hatred. Some simply trivialize him, seeing him as someone mildly interesting, useful for feeding curiosity or morbid interest, but never as a Lord worthy of worship. And that same rejection is still alive today. In the middle of all this, another wound cuts through the story, quiet yet heartbreaking. Peter. While Jesus faces accusations and violence inside, Peter lingers outside in the shadows, watching from afar. And there, in the freezing night air, huddled by the fire, he is confronted by seemingly harmless questions. Aren't you one of them? And the very disciple who hours earlier swore loyalty unto death denies him once, twice, 3 times, and then the rooster crows. That moment is devastating, exposing yet another layer of Christ's pain. He is not just rejected by declared enemies, but denied by a close friend. It makes the entire scene feel so much more human and so much heavier. Peter isn't Judas. He doesn't betray him for silver, but he still fails. He still collapses under pressure. He realizes his genuine love was not enough to hold him up in his own strength. Remembering the words of Jesus, he breaks inside, runs out, and weeps bitterly. That image paints a portrait of intimate grief. The Passion of Christ is not just surrounded by external hatred. It is pierced by the devastating weakness of those who love him, but do not yet understand their own fragility. Yet amid all these trials, through all the chaos, the coming and going, the political and religious pressure, Jesus stands firm, perfectly serene, bruised and humiliated, yet unbroken in his obedience. The innocent is treated as guilty, so the truly guilty might find a path to forgiveness. That is the heart of redemption, shining through even before the cross. Because what is unfolding here is more than just a sequence of human cruelty. It is the journey of the Lamb toward the altar, where he will carry the weight of the world's sin. That changes everything about this story. Yes, there is injustice, manipulation, cowardice, and lies. There is violence and humiliation. But beneath it all, God's plan marches steadily forward. Men believe they are pulling the strings. Religious leaders think they are crushing a dangerous threat. Pilate believes he is settling a political crisis. Herod believes he is just mocking a strange prisoner. Peter thinks everything is collapsing. But far above their short-sighted views, heaven sees the true reality. The Son is walking step by step toward the ultimate sacrifice. This is why these sham trials are not just a bridge to the crucifixion. They are a brutal exposure of what human sin is capable of doing when wrapped in religion, power, convenience, and fear. But they also gloriously reveal who Christ truly is. While everyone around him is stripped bare in their darkness, he alone remains pure. While the powerful manipulate, he stands firm in truth. While the guilty condemn, the innocent keeps silent and pushes forward. And as the dark night nears its end, we feel the sheer weight of this injustice reaching an unbearable level. Everything is pushing Jesus toward a fate that seems absurd, yet right there, when the innocent has been rejected by religion, politics, and the crowds. The story prepares to reveal its most painful, glorious center. The path to the cross lies wide open. If you want to continue uncovering the true meaning of these biblical events, subscribe right now and stay with us to the end. Part 12. The Crucifixion, the ultimate sacrificial offering. After a long night of arrest, a wave of corrupt trials, brutal mockery, the cowardice of rulers, and the condemnation of the innocent, our story reaches the darkest, most pivotal moment of Holy Week. We have left behind the tension of the garden and the lies of the interrogation rooms. Now the road leads to the place where Christ's suffering will reach its most visible, agonizing, and sacred expression, the cross. Jesus is handed over to be scourged. While we often gloss over those words, we must stop and feel the true weight of what they meant. This was no minor punishment. Roman flogging was unspeakably brutal, tearing skin, weakening the body, and leaving deep wounds long before reaching the execution site. So when the story leads us to the crucifixion, we are not looking at a strong, unblemished man marching calmly to his death. We are seeing the Son of God already beaten, bleeding, exhausted, and exposed to a physical agony that very few humans could ever survive. And then comes the crown of thorns, an image both profoundly tragic and cruel. This was not some cheap visual mockery. It was a violent parody of his kingship. Roman soldiers dress him in mock robes, crown him a caricature of a king, and strike him. They mockingly kneel before him and spit in his face. Everything about this scene screams contempt as fallen humanity takes the true king and treats him like a joke. Yet herein lies one of the script's deepest sacred ironies. Through their mockery, they speak more truth than they realize. Yes, he is indeed king, but a king whose glory is revealed not by the strength of an army, but by a love that endures total disgrace to rescue his enemies. Picture the scene clearly. The streets of Jerusalem buzzing with anticipation just days ago. Now watch a condemned man walk by. Dust kicks up underfoot as the crowd presses in. There are shouts, curiosity, hate in some, tears in others, and indifference in many. The air is thick, heavy with ritualized violence. Jesus drags his cross, or more precisely, the heavy wooden crossbeam that a condemned man had to carry to the execution site. And this journey is more than physical. It is a public march of humiliation. The man welcomed with hosannas is now led away as someone who deserves to die. They're heading to Golgotha, the place of the skull. The very name carries a cold, brutal weight. It was an execution site, a space far outside the temple's sacred walls, tied to death, shame, and imperial punishment. Rome crucified people not just to kill, but to send a message. The cross meant public shame, prolonged agony, and total exposure. It was never a clean or private death. It was a brutal declaration of absolute power. This is how rebels die. But what Rome failed to see was that on this very cross built to crush him, God was raising an altar where the redemption of the world would be revealed. And here we reach the heart of the gospel. Because Jesus does not die simply as a martyr for a noble cause or a victim of historic injustice. He dies as a sacrifice. He dies as the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Everything Passover foretold, everything those temple sacrifices pointed to, everything the ancient prophets anticipated, converges right here. The cross is no accident in the story of Jesus. It is the very reason he came. When he is crucified between criminals, the humiliation becomes almost unbearable. The Holy One is counted among sinners. The Pure One is placed among the guilty. To human eyes, it looks like a total defeat. The crowd looks on and thinks, "There goes another condemned man." Some mock him. Others shake their heads, throwing cruel insults. "If you are the Son of God, come down from that cross." He saved others, but he cannot save himself. Those voices represent much more than the passing cruelty of the moment. They reveal a human logic that only understands power when forced upon others. They do not see that because he is saving others, he will not come down. And that is key. Jesus stays on the cross not because he lacks the power to come down, but because his love holds him there. That truth changes everything. The pain is real. The physical weakness is real. The public shame is real. But Christ staying on that cross flows from a deliberate choice to redeem us. He is there out of obedience to the Father and love for sinners. He is willingly taking the place of sacrifice, the cross, so it is no longer just a Roman execution tool. It becomes the stage where God's justice and mercy meet in a way no human could have ever imagined. There is also something deeply moving about the words Jesus speaks from the cross. Even in the middle of extreme pain, he still reveals who he is, asking forgiveness for those who do not know what they are doing. That is simply astonishing. While men pour out hate, he responds with prayer. As they nail him down, he intercedes. As they mock, he opens a door of forgiveness. This does not lessen the gravity of human sin, but it shows the depth of the Savior's heart. Then comes the repentant thief, crucified right beside him. In the middle of the agony, he recognizes Jesus and asks to be remembered in his kingdom. And Jesus answers with a promise of paradise. What a powerful moment. The cross is surrounded by violence, blood, insults, and darkness. Yet it remains a place of grace. Even in his final hours, Christ is still saving people. The door of mercy remains wide open. This makes it clear that hope does not depend on a person's perfect record, but on the authority and compassion of the crucified King. He also speaks words to his mother and the beloved disciple, showing care in the midst of suffering. This adds a deeply human layer to the scene. Jesus is not numb, nor has pain stripped away his humanity. He still loves, still sees, still cares. And then comes one of the most profound cries in the entire Bible, echoing Psalm 22. This is no empty cry of despair, but the raw reality of what he is bearing. There, on the cross, Christ is entering the full weight of judgment that our sins deserved. He is drinking the cup to the very dregs. We must speak of this with reverence, because the cross was more than physical agony, as terrible as that pain was. It was where the Son bore the sins of the world for our redemption. The innocent one takes on the guilt of others. The righteous offers himself for the unrighteous. The Holy One endures judgment to open a path of reconciliation for the guilty. That is why the cross is so central. There we see not only the painful cost of sin, but how deeply God loves. In the middle of this scene, creation itself seems to respond. The sky turns dark, the earth shakes, and the entire atmosphere is marked by a weight that goes far beyond anything human. This is not just another execution in the empire. It is a cosmic event. Something is happening between heaven and earth, between justice and grace, between the promise and its fulfillment. And then comes one of the most powerful signs in the entire narrative. The temple veil is torn from top to bottom. That detail is massive. The veil separated the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place, which symbolized how inaccessible God's holy presence was to sinful humanity. By tearing open, it declares something glorious through Christ's sacrifice. Access has been opened. It is no longer a barrier humans must try to cross with endless effort. The way has been opened by the blood of the Son. The cross does not just forgive it, reconciles. It does not just wash away guilt, it opens the entrance to God's presence. And when Jesus finally gives up his spirit, he does not do so as a victim of a senseless death. He does it with authority, fully aware of completion. The work is finished. What a short yet monumental phrase. It means everything he came to do has reached its goal. Nothing is missing for a perfect sacrifice. No other lamb is needed. No other offering is needed. No other mediator. The cross has completed what no religion, no system of merit, and no ancient sacrifice could ever finish. And that has a deeply practical application for us today. So many people carry old guilt, trying to pay for past mistakes, struggling to make peace with God through effort promises or self-punishment. But the cross declares that the true price was paid by Christ, not us. That doesn't make sin any less serious. It makes it even more serious. It cost the blood of God's own Son. But that is exactly why grace becomes so glorious. If he truly bore our guilt, then the forgiveness he offers is real, solid, and absolute. And we can't forget the contrast dominating this entire scene. To the world, the cross looks like failure and shame, the humiliating end of a rejected leader. But to God, it is victory. Not a loud victory by human standards, but the quiet triumph of obedient love over sin, death, and the powers of darkness. Where everything looks like defeat, God is winning in the deepest way. Where the Son seems stripped, he is exalted in perfect obedience. Right there where human hands think they have finished him off, the enemy's final defeat is sealed. The crucifixion isn't just the saddest moment of Holy Week. It is the center of the redeeming sacrifice, the burning heart of the gospel, the focal point where all biblical history converges. From the Passover lamb in Egypt, to the promises of the prophets, from the need for atonement, to the sinner's cry for reconciliation. Everything points to this hill. Now you can feel it. After the garden, the arrest, the trials, and the condemnation, the cross reveals the price of divine love. But the silence that follows will be an agonizing test. Because when the body is taken down, when the blood grows cold and the tomb is sealed, it will feel like the end. History will pause, a weight so heavy that only hope born from promise can sustain the heart. 13. The death and the burial. When everything seems over after the cross, after the final cry, after the earthquake, the torn veil, and that dark moment when Jesus gives up his spirit, history falls into a silence that weighs heavy on the chest. The crowd's screams are gone. No more arguments, no more interrogations, no frantic rushing of soldiers and leaders. Only the lifeless body of the Lord remains, and that sight must have shattered the souls of everyone who loved him. It was one thing to watch him suffer, another to watch him die, and even harder to see his body taken down from the cross, motionless, wounded, silent. Now Holy Week enters its most painful hour, because it truly feels like the end has come. The teacher who spoke with absolute authority, who healed the sick, raised the dead, calmed storms, and rode into Jerusalem as king, now lies dead. The body of God's Son has been lowered from the cross, no longer suspended between heaven and earth. He is cradled in human arms, wrapped in grief, surrounded by an unbearable sense of finality. The sacrifice is finished, yes, but the hearts of his followers cannot see past their immediate grief. Quietly picture the scene. Evening falls, the light fades over Jerusalem, and the air grows colder, heavier. The echo of Golgotha still hangs in the heavy air, but everything moves at a slower pace now, solemn, quiet, and deeply wounded. This is no longer public torture, but the quiet, heavy weight of Jesus' body. Hands that once blessed, healed, and broke bread are now completely still. His face, which wept over Jerusalem and looked with love at so many, is now marked by death. The crown of thorns, the blood, the wounds, the absolute exhaustion of his physical frame. It must have been almost unbearable for those who loved him to watch. And right there, Joseph of Arimathea steps forward. This detail matters because it shows that even in the darkest hour, God still raises up people to fulfill his purpose with dignity. Joseph was a respected council member who was waiting for the kingdom of God. While others hide in fear, he steps forward courageously to ask for the body of Jesus. That act alone carries massive weight. Approaching Pilate for the body of a crucified man was no small risk. It meant exposing himself, identifying with a condemned criminal, and publicly aligning with an enemy of the state. But Joseph does it anyway. And in his courage, we see something beautiful. Even when the light seems completely gone, faithful hearts still honor Christ. Then Nicodemus arrives, bringing a massive amount of myrrh and aloes, adding even more dignity to the quiet moment. The same Nicodemus who once came to Jesus by night now steps into the darkest evening in history, coming not to ask questions, but to honor his Lord. What a powerful scene. Two men in a city still buzzing with Passover tension and the day's horrific events approach the body of Christ with tender care, respect, grief, and love. They can't change what happened. They can't undo his death. And they can't yet see the hope of resurrection. But they can honor him in burial. That teaches us something profound. Even when we don't understand what God is doing, we can still choose to respond with faithfulness. Jesus' body is wrapped in linen cloths, following Jewish burial customs. This detail is crucial because it reminds us his death was real, physical, and absolute. This wasn't an illusion or a simple swoon, nor is it a metaphor. His body is treated exactly like a corpse, prepared for the grave with spices and linen in a rush before the Sabbath begins. It gives the scene a tangible historical weight. The Redeemer is truly dead. They lay him in a brand new tomb cut into the rock, where no one else had ever been laid. After the chaos of the city, the noise of the trial, the scandal of Golgotha, the story shifts to a quieter, more enclosed final place. A tomb carved from stone, a cold, silent, and motionless space. There they lay the body of the man who was the center of all the disciples' hope. And as the great stone rolls to close the entrance, the scene is sealed with a brutal sense of finality. That stone holds immense symbolic power in this story. It is not just a rock blocking a cave. To human eyes, it is the proof that everything is over. It marks the boundary between movement and stillness, between voice and silence, between visible hope and the darkness of grief. With the stone sealing the tomb, the story seems to hit rock bottom. And in a way, that is exactly how those who loved Jesus felt. To them, this closure must have been devastating. It was no longer just the cross. Now it was the tomb. No longer just suffering. Now it was absence. Here the story strikes a deeply human chord, because there are times in life when you feel a heavy stone has fallen over your own story. Moments when something feels truly finished. A dream, a relationship, a chapter, a hope, a prayer that felt so alive. And suddenly everything goes quiet, closed, and buried. And that is exactly why this part of Holy Week feels so relatable. Because we do not always live on Easter Sunday. So often the human experience feels much more like this very moment. A Saturday of the soul. A season when heaven seems silent and the stone remains in place. Meanwhile, the disciples must have been scattered, confused, and empty inside. Everything they had given up to follow Jesus now seemed clouded by questions. How could they accept the cross? How could they understand the death of the one they recognized as Messiah? What about the words they heard? Where should they place the hopes that seemed so clear when they watched him heal, teach, and confront? The death of Jesus did not just leave a body in a tomb. It also left lost hearts, trembling faith, and wounded memories. Yet here lies one of the greatest paradoxes of this scene. Even though human eyes see an end, God's plan has not been interrupted or defeated. The silence of the tomb does not mean an absence of purpose. The stillness of the grave does not mean God has lost control. On the contrary, even in that moment of deepest darkness, his redemptive work keeps moving toward its final completion. The trouble is, the disciples cannot see it yet. They are living the story from below, from pain, from loss. And the same thing happens to us. Often, when we are trapped in suffering, we cannot always understand what God is doing. Besides the fact that Jesus is placed in a real, visible, and sealed tomb, also prepares the ground for the glory to come. The resurrection will be so powerful precisely because death was real. The empty tomb holds weight because it was once sealed shut. Victory will shine so brightly because there was a very real darkness before it. God does not build hope on an illusion. He builds it by walking through the hardest reality. So this part of the story must not be rushed or softened. We must feel its weight. We have to stand before the stone for a moment. We must let the silence of the tomb do its work in our hearts. It is also important to note that some women watch where the body is placed. That shows love, loyalty, and devotion amidst the pain. They have no political power. They cannot undo what happened, nor face the system that condemned Jesus. But they are there, watching, remembering, staying close, even at the scene of death. And that gives the moment a quiet tenderness. While many have fled or are hiding, they remain, carrying in their hearts a mix of love, grief, and loyalty that will soon be rewarded in ways they cannot yet imagine. And all of this makes Jesus' burial more than a mere detail after the crucifixion. It is an essential part of the redemption story. Death reaches its visible end. The body enters the tomb. The grave is closed. Grief becomes tangible. Hope to human eyes seems to fade away. And right there, in that very real darkness, faith must learn to stand, not on what it sees, but on what God has said. Because even if the disciples cannot yet grasp it clearly, the story is not over. The silence of Saturday is not the final end. The stone is not the last word. The grave is not the eternal destination of the Son of God. But before reaching that glory, the narrative forces us through this painful pause, through this emptiness, this long night of the soul, where everything seems closed and the heart can barely breathe. And so, after the noise of the cross, the story enters a silence so heavy it almost shatters the air. The body rests in the tomb. The stone is in its place. Jerusalem goes about its day, largely unaware of what is to come. Enemies believe the trouble is over. Disciples feel everything has collapsed. And we are left facing one of faith's hardest trials. believing that God is still working precisely when all seems completely lost. 14. The resurrection, the empty tomb, and eternal victory. And after that heavy silence, after the sealed grave, the motionless stone, and the unbearable feeling that all was over, the story enters the most glorious dawn in the whole Bible. Because what seemed final was not. The tomb had enclosed the body of Jesus to human eyes, but it could not lock away God's power. Death had shown its worst, but it would not have the final word. And so, while the pain of Friday and the silence of Saturday still weighed heavily on the disciples' hearts, the first day of the week began. Dawn must have carried a very different mood from the previous days. No longer the noise of the crowd celebrating the triumphal entry, no longer the tension of the trials, no longer the thunder of Golgotha. It was a cold, quiet morning, still heavy with grief. The women who had closely followed everything draw near the tomb with spices, driven by love, loyalty, and deep sorrow. They do not go expecting a triumphant resurrection. They go with wounded hearts, simply to honor the body of Jesus. They're still thinking about death, not victory. And that makes this moment even more powerful, showing that God's miracle breaks in right when human hope has completely run out. Picture the scene. Light is just beginning to touch the horizon. The morning air is crisp and cool. Jerusalem is not yet fully awake. Silence hangs over the road. The women walk with hurried steps but heavy hearts. They still carry the image of the cross, the lowered body, and the sealed tomb. Surely a practical worry also weighs on them. Who will roll away the stone? That stone still represents the ultimate obstacle in their minds. When grief is heavy, human logic can only focus on the visible barriers right in front of us. But while they walk worrying about the stone, God has already done something beyond their wildest imagination. Reaching the tomb, they find the unthinkable. The stone has been rolled away. That single detail shatters every expectation. The stone is not in its place. The tomb that was supposed to keep the silent proof of death is wide open. And when they peek inside, the scene defies all human logic. The body is not there. The tomb is empty. The space meant to hold the end of the story has become the first visible stage of God's victory over death. Here the story reaches one of its emotional and theological peaks, because the empty tomb does not mean simply that the body vanished. It means Jesus has risen. It means death could not hold the Son of God. It means the sacrifice of the cross was accepted. It means the work of redemption has found its glorious confirmation. If the cross showed the price of forgiveness, the resurrection reveals the Savior's complete victory. If death seemed to end it all, the resurrection opens up the eternal horizon of hope. And then comes the angelic announcement, piercing through history like a burst of glory in the middle of grief. He is not here, for he has risen. Such a simple yet massive statement. He is not here. The tomb is no longer Christ's home. The place of mourning has been transformed into a testimony. The site that seemed to seal defeat now proclaims victory. The rolled stone, the burial cloths, the empty space, the heavenly announcement. Everything declares that something absolutely decisive has happened. This is not a symbolic comfort, nor a poetic way of saying his teachings live on. This is a real resurrection. Jesus lives, and this changes everything. Absolutely everything. Because if Christ had died and stayed in that tomb, then the story of Holy Week would just be the tragic tale of a good, admirable man, powerful in word and deed, but ultimately defeated by death. The cross would still be shocking, but not victorious. His sacrifice would remain moving, but unconfirmed. The disciples would have memories, but no living hope. However, the resurrection completely transforms the meaning of the cross. It declares that the Son is truly who he said he was. It declares that the power of sin has been defeated. It declares that death itself has been conquered from within by the invincible life of the Son of God. It is fascinating to look at the human reaction to the empty tomb. Not everyone immediately reached a calm, full understanding. First came shock, confusion, fear, running, and endless questions. That makes the scene feel so much more real. Because when God acts in such a glorious way, the human heart needs time to process it. The women hear the news with a mix of fear and great joy. The disciples hear the news, and some sprint to the tomb. There is a different kind of tension in the air now, not of violence or conspiracy, but of a hope starting to wake up among the ruins of their grief. Peter and the other disciple race toward the tomb. They too find clues that do not fit a rushed robbery or any simple explanation. The burial linens are lying there. The tomb is empty. And slowly, the truth begins to cut through their confusion. It is not that everyone gets every detail right away, but the core reality has already broken through. Jesus is not dead. The grave has been conquered, and soon the appearances of the risen Christ bring this truth home in a deeply personal, life-changing way. Jesus does not rise just to float as some abstract idea in his followers' minds. He shows up, speaks, calls them by name, shows his wounds, walks with them, shares meals, corrects them, comforts them, and heals them. This is crucial because the resurrection is not just a glorious teaching. It is a real meeting between the living Christ and broken, confused, frightened people. Think about Mary Magdalene. Her deep sorrow drove her to the tomb in tears. To her, everything was still lost. And then she hears her name spoken by the very voice that death could not silence. That moment is incredibly beautiful. The risen Lord does not just defeat the grave on a cosmic level. He steps directly into our human sadness and tenderly calls us by name. This proves the resurrection is not some cold, distant victory. It has a face, a voice, a warmth, and a restoring love. The same goes for the disciples locked away in fear. What a striking contrast. Just a short while ago, they were scattered, ashamed, broken inside, and hiding from the authorities. The cross had completely shattered them. But when the risen Jesus stands among them, the whole room changes. Fear begins to pull back, and shame no longer gets the final say. Guilt is not brushed aside, but met head-on with pure grace. The Lord is alive, and his presence brings meaning back to where everything lay in ruins. This hits incredibly hard with Peter. The disciple who denied Jesus is not left condemned to rot in his failure. The resurrection also clears a path for healing. The very Jesus who was denied returns to restore, to call again, and to rebuild. That is one of the deepest wonders of the gospel. Resurrection does not just defeat death. It puts broken people back together. It does not just open a future eternity. It heals our wounded past. In a deeper sense, the resurrection is God's announcement that the sacrifice was accepted and that his kingdom has broken into history with unmatched power. Jesus rises as the first fruits, the ultimate champion, and the beginning of a brand new creation. Death had ruled human history ever since the fall. But now it meets someone who walks right through it and wins. This means Christian hope is no longer built on wishful thinking, emotional comfort, or religious ideals. It is built on a glorious fact: Christ is alive. And that changes our daily lives in a deeply practical way. Because so many people live as if death, failure, guilt, or darkness get to have the final word. Many carry inner graves, promises that feel dead, prayers that seem buried, and parts of life that feel sealed off with stone. But the resurrection of Jesus declares that God's power can break in exactly where we see only an end. It doesn't mean every struggle vanishes overnight, but it does mean history is no longer ruled by despair. The risen Lord changes the logic of the universe and the human heart. Also, the resurrection shows that Christ's victory isn't just for some day after we die. Sure, it offers eternal hope, which is huge, but it also changes our lives today. If Christ is alive, then sin is not invincible. If Christ is alive, then guilt can truly be forgiven. If Christ is alive, then prayer doesn't rise toward a memory, but to a very present Lord. If Christ is alive, then the church doesn't follow the memory of some great teacher, but the living voice of a glorified Savior. And if He lives, then even in this broken world, there is real, active hope. That is why this moment isn't just a happy ending to a sad story. It is the heart of eternal victory. The empty tomb isn't just a beautiful detail to move us. It is the declaration that the darkest power in human history has been broken. Death no longer rules unchallenged. Sin no longer accuses without an answer. The grave can no longer claim to be the final destination for those who are in Christ. The resurrection opens a brand new horizon for all humanity. And so, after the silence of Saturday, the first morning breaks like a new creation. The stone has been rolled away. The tomb is left behind. Angels announce, women run, and the disciples wake up to wonder. The teacher appears. Hope is reborn. And we finally realize that Holy Week doesn't end with blood on a cross or a stone over a grave. It ends with a living, glorious, victorious Lord whose triumph doesn't stop at that sunrise, but reaches on forever. Because the resurrection of Jesus didn't just change the end of that week, it forever changed the destiny of everyone who believes in Him. 15. The true meaning of Holy Week for our lives today. And after walking through this entire story, from the entry into Jerusalem to the empty tomb, one truth remains that can't be treated as a simple religious tradition or an annual routine. Holy Week, according to the Bible, isn't just a sequence of sacred scenes we watch from afar. It is the deepest revelation of God's heart for a broken, guilty, tired, and lost humanity. It is the story of divine love, willingly entering human pain to open up a real path of salvation, forgiveness, and hope. When you look at the whole sequence, you see that nothing was random. Jesus didn't enter Jerusalem by accident. He didn't go to the cross as a victim caught off guard. He didn't die simply because men were stronger than him. Every step had a purpose. Every scene made sense. The humble king entered, knowing he'd be rejected. The teacher sat at the table knowing he'd be betrayed. The son prayed in Gethsemane, knowing the cup he had to drink. The innocent one faced unfair trials, knowing the path led to Calvary. And the crucified Savior died, knowing his sacrifice would open up direct access to God. This all means Holy Week is not, at its heart, the story of a tragedy spinning out of control. It is the story of a redemption, perfectly guided by the Father's will. And that completely changes how we view our own lives. Because if the cross and resurrection are part of God's plan, then suffering, silence, and darkness do not automatically mean God has lost control. Holy Week teaches us that even in our darkest hours, when everything seems to break, God may be doing something deeper than we can see. Friday looked like a defeat. Saturday felt like absolute silence. But Sunday proved that heaven never stopped working. That touches anyone who has ever survived a long night of the soul. We also need to understand that Holy Week reveals our deepest human problem. Sometimes we think our biggest issues are external, hidden in our circumstances, in a lack of resources, the pressure of the world, the pain of others, or the injustice all around us. But the story of Jesus shows that the root problem runs much deeper. It is sin. It is being separated from God. and it is in the human heart. A heart that can praise Christ one day and reject him the next, speak of faith, but live far from truth, and stay close to the sacred while remaining hard inside. Holy Week shows us not just how much Christ suffered, but why that pain was necessary. And right there we find a central truth of the gospel. Jesus didn't die just to set an example of love. He died to do what we could never do for ourselves. He took the sinner's place, carried our guilt, endured our judgment, and offered himself as the ultimate sacrifice. This means salvation doesn't come from our merit, our discipline, our religious efforts, or our promises. It comes from the work of Christ. The cross shows that sin is far worse than we thought. But it also shows that God's love is greater than we could ever deserve. And this has a direct impact on real life. So many people carry old guilt, unhealed wounds, hidden shame, and failures that still weigh heavily on the inside. Some smile on the outside, but inside they are trapped by anxiety, fear, emptiness, or a weary soul. Holy Week speaks directly to that exact place. It tells us that Jesus didn't stay far from human pain. He entered it. He knew betrayal, abandonment, injustice, and agony, physical suffering, and the silence of the grave. And because he walked through all of it, he can meet us in our own darkest nights. The triumphal entry confronts us with a very modern question. Do we only want Jesus when he fits our expectations? Or are we willing to receive the King as he truly is? Many search for a Christ who solves immediate problems, but refuse to surrender to his lordship. The cleansing of the temple speaks directly to us today. It reminds us that God does not just want outward religion, but a clean, sincere, surrendered heart. The Last Supper teaches us that our hope rests in the new covenant, sealed by Christ's blood, not our own merits. Washing the disciples' feet shows us that true greatness is serving, not dominating. Gethsemane teaches us to obey, even when our soul is trembling. Unjust trials reveal that the world will not always accept the truth. The cross shows the price of forgiveness, and the resurrection declares that pain, death, and sin never have the final word. That means Holy Week is not just a story to hear. It is a truth we must answer. It is not enough to admire it, get emotional, or see its beauty. The gospel always calls the heart to make a real choice. What will we do with Christ? Will we watch him from a distance like the crowd, or resist him like the leaders did? Will we deny him in hard times like Peter, trade him for other loyalties like Judas, or fall down surrendered before him, knowing he is God's Son who died and rose to save us? Besides, the resurrection offers us a hope that is neither fragile nor sentimental. It is not about positive thinking or repeating nice phrases to get by. It is about a hope anchored in fact. Christ is alive, and if Christ lives, our guilt can truly be forgiven. If Christ lives, there is restoration for the fallen. If Christ lives, there is purpose even after failure. If Christ lives, death is no longer the absolute end for those who believe in him. And if Christ lives, then our deepest wounds are not condemned to stay forever in some inner tomb. There is something else Holy Week makes very clear. God does not love superficially, from a distance, or just with words. He loves by entering history, taking on flesh, walking among sinners, and weeping over a hardened city, washing feet, sweating in agony, carrying the cross and conquering the grave. That love is real, concrete, costly, and truly transforms lives. We are not talking about some empty religious message. We are talking about a living Savior who still calls, forgives, restores, and gives new life. For today's viewer, this can change everything. Maybe someone arrived here tired of fighting alone, dragging a guilt they just cannot release. Maybe they tried everything to fill the void, but still feel no peace inside. Perhaps they even know the language of faith, religious customs, and Bible stories, but have never truly stopped to look at what the cross and resurrection mean for their own life. And right there, Holy Week stops being ancient history and becomes a living invitation. Christ did not die and rise just to be remembered on a single calendar date. He died and rose to reconcile humanity with God. And that final truth beats at the heart of this entire story. Holy Week, according to the Bible, is proof that when all seemed lost, God was already preparing the greatest miracle of all. When sin seemed too deep, love ran deeper still. When the grave felt final, life broke through with eternal power. When humanity could not save itself, the Son of God came to do for us what we never could have achieved alone. That is why Holy Week does not just end with an emotion. It ends with a call to see Christ not as a distant figure, but as Lord and Savior. A call to leave shallow faith behind and walk in a real relationship with Him. A call to believe the cross was for us, and the empty tomb opens a new future for us. Because the Jesus who entered Jerusalem, who was betrayed, died on the cross, and rose again on the third day, did not just change world history. He can also rewrite the story of anyone who truly surrenders to Him. And after walking through every moment of Holy Week according to the Bible, one undeniable truth remains. Jesus did not endure all that pain in vain. It was not just a betrayal, not just a cross, and not just a tomb. It was the price of God's love for a wounded, tired, guilty, and lost humanity. Every step Christ took toward Calvary was a step of mercy toward us. Every wound spoke of redemption, every tear of compassion, and every drop of blood declared there was still hope, even for the most broken heart. The cross proves that sin is far more serious than many realize, but also that God's love is wider than we can ever grasp. And the resurrection reminds us that neither darkness, nor death, nor hell, nor pain get the final say when God steps in. That is why Holy Week does not end in sadness. It ends in victory. It does not end in defeat, but in life. Not with a stone sealing a grave, but with a living, glorious, and eternal Savior, calling every person to return to Him. Maybe today you also arrived here carrying your own crosses, wounds that will not heal, guilt that pursues you, exhausting questions, paralyzing fears, or an emptiness nothing in this world has been able to fill. But the story you just heard reminds you that Jesus entered human suffering specifically to meet you in that very place. He did not rise just to be remembered, but to transform lives, restore souls, and give a hope that never dies. If this story touched your heart, do not let it be just another tale. Let this truth enter your life, because Holy Week, according to the Bible, is not just something that happened centuries ago. It is living proof that when all seemed lost, God was already preparing the greatest miracle of all. If this story spoke to you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who needs to understand the true meaning of Holy Week according to the Bible.